Hello everyone and welcome to this, the first of GBRW's Strategic Management Guides. My name is Johnny Risk and I'm a Director of GBRW Learning. Our mission at GBRW is to provide top quality training to banks and other financial institutions, especially in emerging markets. My particular area of interest is strategic management, and these guides introduce some of the great tools and techniques available to help you formulate and implement a strategy for your organisation. In this session, we're going to look at one of the most popular and best known tools for strategy development, the Ansoff Matrix. So, what is the Ansoff Matrix? Put simply, it's a tool to help managers think about the broad strategic options for the growth and expansion of a business. It was developed by a Russian-American mathematician named Igor Ansoff. Ansoff was a pioneer in his field. He developed a new approach to strategic management based on a combination of existing concepts and new ideas that he introduced. He became known as the father of strategic management. The best known and most enduring of Ansoff's ideas is the so-called Ansoff Matrix. It was first published in the Harvard Business Review in 1957, but is as popular and relevant today, 63 years later, as it was then. It's also known as the Product Market Expansion Grid, and we will shortly see why. Like all good business tools and models, the Ansoff Matrix appears simple, yet it provides some profound insights. In this case, insights into the options available for a business to expand and grow. The Ansoff Matrix is a basic, typical four-box diagram. Along one axis, here the horizontal axis, are products, starting with existing products that the organisation already has, and moving on to new products that it might want to develop in the future. Along the other axis, here the vertical axis, are markets, again starting with existing markets, in other words the markets you're already operating in, and moving on to new markets that you might wish to enter in the future. Ansoff argues that for a business to expand, it has a choice of only 4 high-level strategies. It can continue to sell its existing products into its existing markets, only do it better so that it expands its market and/or its market share. He called that strategy market penetration. Another option is to remain focused on existing markets and customers, but to develop additional products to sell to them. This he called the product development strategy. A third option is to stick with the existing product range, but to find new markets for those products, whether new segments or new territories or both. This strategy he called market development. Or finally, the fourth option, a business can seek to develop new products for new markets. This he called the diversification strategy. Importantly, different strategies also represent different levels of risk. For example, a market penetration strategy, where we're dealing with familiar products in a familiar market, carries a relatively low level of risk. On the other hand, a diversification strategy, where we are seeking to sell new products to unfamiliar markets, is of course riskier, even though the rewards for success may be greater. This was an important part of Ansoff's thinking. Graphically, the level of risk in the Ansoff matrix increases as we move along each axis, away from the origin. Ansoff believed that his model was a comprehensive representation of all the options open to a business seeking to expand. In other words, whatever strategy it pursued must fall within one of those 4 boxes. However, the 4 choices are not mutually exclusive. An organisation can pursue 2 or more of these strategies simultaneously. either within the same business unit or across different business units. In the rest of this presentation, we'll be looking more closely at each of those four options, their features and the risks associated with them, and in what circumstances an organisation might choose a particular strategy. We'll also look at some real-life examples of how some of those strategies have been translated into action, including in the financial sector. So now let's look more closely at that first option in the bottom left-hand corner of our matrix, what Ansoff called market penetration, which simply means to increase the sale of existing products in existing markets. This is regarded as the lowest risk strategy in the Ansoff Matrix, because it's a do what you already know but do it better kind of strategy. What it means is continuing to focus on the market that you already have and on the products or services that you're already delivering to your customers. For that reason, the risks are low. You don't need to launch radically new products, and you don't need to explore new markets or new market segments. But it does not mean doing nothing. On the contrary, a market penetration strategy means redoubling efforts to find more and better ways of increasing your revenue and profit from your existing market, selling existing products and services. There are essentially two ways you can do that. The first is to find new customers who might be interested in your products and services. That's easier to do in a growing market, where you might aim to take a bigger share of new customers coming into the market. In a mature market with limited natural growth, that means taking market share away from your competitors. The second is to sell more to existing customers. There are tried and tested ways of implementing a market penetration strategy. For example, a bank or any other organisation might launch new market initiatives to raise its profile and that of the products and services it wants to sell. This might include advertising campaigns, intensified calls on customers, improvements to the website, loyalty reward programs, cross-selling initiatives utilising enhanced CRM capabilities, and so on. Pricing might also have a role to play. In a price-sensitive market, organisations can gain market share with a more competitive pricing structure. For example, by offering loyalty rewards or discounts to preferred customers or market segments. In the case of a bank, there is a close correlation between pricing of loan products and perceptions of risk. By reviewing its risk ratings and overall risk appetite for different market segments or industry sectors, a bank can perhaps make greater inroads into previously underserved segments of the market. Improvements to distribution channels can also have an important impact. This might include, for example, relocating or redesigning branches, upgrading the website, or providing additional training to the sales force. Last, but by no means least, by improving productivity and efficiency, whether through investments in technology or by simplifying and streamlining business processes and workflow, a bank can maintain profitability while offering customers more competitive pricing, whether on loans, deposits, or transactional services. So to summarise, the market penetration option is the first and most obvious option for business expansion. It's particularly relevant in a young market that is still growing. But even in mature markets, there is always room for a bank or other organisation to improve its performance and gain additional market share. The attraction of the market penetration option is that it often requires very little additional investment. The bank's management and staff will already be familiar with the market and products, so there's no major disruption and no steep learning curve to climb. On the other hand, in a mature marketplace, a market penetration strategy alone might not provide the rate of growth that the organisation is seeking. So if your growth target is more ambitious than can be achieved through market penetration, then you'll need to consider the other options within the Ansoff Matrix. So now let's take a look at the next strategic option for expansion. Moving along the horizontal axis in the Ansoff Matrix, the next strategic option is to develop new products for your existing markets, perhaps to satisfy needs within your existing customer base that are not already being met. Ansoff called this the product development strategy. Pursuing such a strategy carries a slightly higher risk than the market penetration strategy because you will need to develop new products and services to satisfy additional needs that so far you have not been serving. Those products and services might require skills that you do not currently have, implying the need for new recruitment and/or staff training, and it might involve creating new business processes. The products you introduce might not be new to the market. They may already be offered by competitors in your market, but they are new to you. Or you could be pioneers and introduce products that are not currently available in your market. The new products could come from your own research and development, but you don't have to originate any new product yourself. You might choose instead to buy in a product from another company, sell under license, or even enter into a joint venture with another organization that already has the product you need for your customers. A product development strategy works particularly well if you can continue to use your existing distribution channels, sales force and back office systems. That means that costs can be kept under control. Let's look at an example in the financial sector. Until 1989, the UK housing finance or mortgage market only offered variable interest rate mortgages. The first fixed rate mortgage was introduced by the Halifax Building Society. In a period of high and volatile interest rates, customers appreciated the certainty that this new product offered, and it sold well. It must be said that in the financial sector there is a particular difficulty with product development as a sustainable growth strategy. The reason relates to the nature of financial products. Most financial products are fairly easy to replicate and, unlike say cars, food products, mobile phones or even books, financial products are almost impossible to patent or to copyright. So when competitors see that one of your products is proving successful, they can fairly quickly bring out their own equivalent, and your temporary competitive advantage is lost. Nevertheless, product development forms a vital part of any growth strategy. Of course, introducing new products carries a risk, but if based on a sound understanding of the market, the same market you're already operating in, then it's a manageable risk. Now let's look at the next strategic option for growth in the Ansoff Matrix: market development, or selling existing products in a different market. It's also sometimes referred to as the market extension strategy. This is also a medium risk strategy, though many regard it as slightly higher risk than product development. Why? Well, the assumption is that the effort required to research and understand the needs of a new market, to become known and develop trust with customers in that market, and therefore to be able to gain a meaningful market share, is greater than the effort of developing and launching a new product to customers who you already know well. And there are plenty of examples of companies that have tried and failed in their market extension efforts. We'll look at a classic example in a minute. Market development tends to be the natural path to follow when you feel that all opportunities in your existing market have been exploited, or that the growth opportunities available in existing markets, even with the introduction of new products, would not meet your growth targets. So there is then a need for you to look beyond those markets and see where else there might be opportunities to sell your existing products or apply your existing business model. In this context, new can mean different things. It can mean a new geographic area, whether domestic or international. So, for example, a local business may feel it could also succeed at the national level, or a national business might begin to explore selected overseas markets. Or a business that is already international might look for further territories into which it can expand. But new can also mean new customer segments. You might feel that your existing products, or very slightly modified versions of them, could appeal to new customer segments additional to those which you have traditionally served. Or you could seek to expand your customer base by creating additional sales outlets, or by using different delivery channels to make your products accessible to customers who you could not previously serve. Sometimes you can repackage or very slightly modify a product, or even just promote it differently to appeal to a whole new segment of customers. An interesting example of this is how Coca-Cola created Coke Zero, later renamed Coke Zero Sugar, which was an almost identical low-calorie product to Diet Coke. It did so in order to appeal to a different audience. Diet Coke was very popular with women, but was perceived by many men as unmasculine, even though they were not opposed to the idea of a sugar-free drink. So Coca-Cola introduced Coke Zero, and subsequently Coke Zero Sugar, to fill that gap. Whilst there were some differences in the formulation, Coke Zero tasted more like classic Coke, while Diet Coke was a bit lighter, mainly it was the way the product was packaged and advertised that made it more appealing to male consumers. And so Coca-Cola reached a whole new market with essentially the same product. What are the risks associated with a market development strategy? The risks mainly result from a failure to understand properly the character of the new market, the competitive landscape, or the regulatory environment. In other words, it can take a significant effort to really understand a new market when coming from the outside. There are unfortunately many examples of companies that have tried to take their products to new markets and failed. A classic example is Walmart, which in 1997 sought to enter the German market. It did so by buying up 2 local supermarket chains with nearly 100 stores and applying the Walmart business model to them. 9 years later, Walmart withdrew from the market, having lost around $1 billion. In short, Walmart had failed to understand the characteristics of the German supermarket sector, and in particular the regulatory environment, which favoured smaller shops against hypermarkets, and did not permit the kind of aggressive, predatory pricing that Walmart had used in the US and elsewhere to win market share. Walmart had tried to apply the same corporate culture in Germany as it did in the USA, for example, encouraging staff to smile at customers. But in Germany, it actually made customers feel uncomfortable and was regarded as false and inauthentic. For 4 years in a row, Walmart was voted by customers to be the worst supermarket in Germany. Walmart's failure in Germany is a good example of what can go wrong if you do not properly understand and respond to the particular characteristics of the market you are entering. A trend in the financial sector in the past decade in both emerging markets and developed markets has been to focus more on SMEs and mid-cap corporates rather than only larger corporates. Up to a point, this can be seen as market development, i.e. reaching new customer segments with the same or similar products, i.e. loans, deposits, payments, treasury services, etc. But in some segments, especially smaller businesses, this has to be accompanied by tailoring the products to suit their needs, and more importantly, tailoring the bank's own processes, such as credit assessment and loan administration, to cope with the particular characteristics of smaller businesses. Which takes us on to the next and final quadrant in the Ansoff Matrix. This is the so-called diversification strategy, in which you develop new products at the same time selling them in new markets. It is the highest risk of the 4 growth strategies contemplated in Ansoff's Matrix, for the obvious reason that it involves 2 unknowns. On the one hand, you are creating new products with all the potential for problems that may occur in the process, and at the same time you're targeting a new market or markets where you have less experience and whose characteristics may differ considerably from the markets you are currently in. So what is the attraction of a diversified strategy given the relatively high risks? The attraction is simple. If the strategy succeeds, you may well be able to achieve significantly faster growth and higher returns than you could expect from more conservative strategies described in the other 3 quadrants of the Ansoff Matrix. More than that, in the longer term, a more diversified business portfolio can help provide resilience. For example, if one part of your business is impacted by external events, such as adverse regulatory changes or changes in customer tastes, there is a good chance that another part of the business, selling a different product in a different market, will meanwhile be doing well. In a minute, we'll look at some examples of companies that have implemented successful diversification strategies and done very well out of them. Diversification can take different forms. We call them related diversification and unrelated diversification. In related diversification, a business remains broadly in the same industry. So if you were a baker manufacturing cakes and diversified into manufacturing and selling fresh fruit juice, that would be related diversification because you remained within the food industry. In unrelated diversification, also known as conglomerate diversification, a business goes into an industry and a customer segment where it has no previous experience. So again, if you were that same baker manufacturing cakes, but then set up another business making toys, that would be unrelated diversification. All forms of diversification are facilitated by having a strong and well-recognized brand image, so that you can build on your existing reputation and more easily acquire customer trust. A good example of successful unrelated diversification is the Virgin Group, founded by UK entrepreneur Richard Branson. Branson started modestly in the 1970s with a mail-order business for records, followed by a record shop. But he took advantage of the popularity and reputation of the Virgin brand to launch businesses in unrelated activities, including air travel, rail travel, telecommunications, health, entertainment and sports. Branson's strategy has been largely successful, especially in diversifying the group's sources of income and thereby avoiding dependence on a particular economic sector or customer segment. I should say a word here about commercial banks and their ability to pursue a true diversification strategy. In most jurisdictions, regulators place constraints on the extent to which banks can invest in activities outside financial services. Therefore, for most banks, unrelated diversification is not a meaningful strategic option. Commercial banks are more likely to focus their attention on the first 3 strategies we have covered in Ansoff's Matrix: market penetration, product development, and market development. Let's sum up what we've been talking about. Even though it's now 63 years old, the Ansoff Matrix has survived unchanged and is still an important part of any organization's strategic management toolkit. It is popular and widely used by organizations active in all sectors. Part of the reason for its popularity is its simplicity. Once you understand it, it is clear and intuitively logical and sensible. But alone, it cannot provide all the answers. Rather, it should be seen as part of a broader strategic management toolkit that you can use to help develop and implement sound strategies. The things that the Ansoff Matrix is particularly good for are, firstly, helping you to think about the broad strategic direction in which you want your organization to move and to grow. Secondly, It helps to ensure that you consider all the potential growth options. In other words, all the possibilities captured by those 4 boxes. But most importantly, it helps you to recognize the correlation between different strategic options and risk. The further away you move into new products and/or new markets, the greater is the possibility of things going wrong. What Ansoff's matrix does not do is help you determine what the actual content of your strategy should be. There are other tools better geared to that, and I'll be talking about some of them in future videos in this series. Also, Ansoff's matrix does not factor in the particular economic, social, or technological environment in which you are operating. Nor does it take account of the particular skills and resources that your organization has, or the ones that it might lack. A very important point to remember is that the 4 options in the Ansoff matrix are not mutually exclusive. In other words, you might develop a strategy that has elements of all 4 options, perhaps across different business units. But overall, Ansoff's matrix remains an extremely useful and powerful tool to guide high-level strategic thinking. We should all be grateful for Igor Ansoff's brilliant yet simple insight into business growth. Thank you for watching this brief video. I do hope you found it helpful and interesting. Please take the time to look around our website to find out more about the different training courses and consulting services offered by GBRW. And look out for forthcoming titles in this series of short videos on different aspects of strategic management.